you even listening? KritzKast. The TF2 podcast. With these jerks.
Hello everybody, welcome to KritzKast, the Team Fortress 2 podcast. My name is Aggro and I'm currently not drinking alcohol because it's a special occasion. And what is more special, you ask, than Team Fortress 2's best podcast ever? Well, that's a very strange way of asking that, but nonetheless, I shall answer in my best possible English words. The best thing about Team Fortress 2 is people who are awesome in the world of Team Fortress 2. There is no one more awesome than the person I have with me today. He has excelled at his own particular version, his own variant, his own understanding of the world of Team Fortress 2 has gone beyond the limits of mere mortals. I believe I've spoken about him enough right now. It's time to turn the microphone over to the gentleman himself, Grant Vincent, otherwise known as B4nny. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was the best intro I've ever had.
Okay, your first intro or your best intro? Do you get a lot of intros?
I've had a few, but usually they're pretty simple. That one was pretty epic.
Okay, well, I'm glad I was able to provide you with some entertainment then. So, B4nny, I think before we go any further, for the, I don't know, maybe 4 people that exist in this world who don't know who you are, can you give us like the briefest of brief synopses as to what makes a B4nny?
Sure. So I'm basically just a competitive TF2 player. I've been playing competitive for many, many years, like almost the entirety of TF2's lifespan. And I'm currently the leader of Team Froyo, who's in the top division of ESEA in North America. And I'm also a TF2 content creator on YouTube and Twitch. I do live streaming pretty much every single day. And also coming up, I am sort of the founder of Team Fortress 2 Pro League, which we will probably be talking about today.
Well, in that case, I think we're done here. That's all of my talking points over and done with. Just in the brief introduction. You've done it to me again, B4nny. Right, so let's start at the very beginning then. You are one of the old school. Do you have a Primeval badge? Were you here before the beginning of Team Fortress 2?
Yes, I do have that badge from the beta.
Oh my god! So you're literally one of the old boys of Team Fortress 2, the old school. I'm sure there's some old girls as well out there. But yeah, or old people. Just generally, I mean, you're not that old yourself. You're only like in your early 20s, I'm guessing, from that roguish smile of yours.
Yeah, I'm 24 and a half. I started playing TF2 when I was, like 15, I guess.
You were one of those squeakers when you first started playing.
Yeah, maybe a little. I think my voice wasn't too high, but yeah, I was young.
So what first drove you to Team Fortress 2 in the first place? Did you come to it was this your first person shooter? Did you have other ideas, or did you play other games coming into this where you this predates Minecraft. I was going to say, were you a Minecraft kiddie, but you can't have been.
No, I've never touched Minecraft. My roots are in Unreal Tournament and Call of Duty. I started playing FPS when I was 9 years old, so I had already many years under my belt at that time when I got into TF2. But I was, competing in COD 2, COD 4, and actually was looking for something less competitive, so I got into TF2.
And ironically, here you are, not 10 years later, competing in Team Fortress 2. So if you saw Team Fortress 2 as your less competitive or like a chance to chill out kind of experience, did you initially shy away from the burgeoning experience of competitive? Did you initially like not play comp, or was there comp back when the game started?
There definitely was competitive TF2 back when I started, but I definitely was trying to avoid getting too involved, just purely out of like a commitment standpoint. I had heard about it and people started asking me like to join their teams just based on my pub stomping. And eventually I did cave and give in and join a team as like a ninth grader. So I started having to, that was the main reason I wanted to avoid having to like juggle my school stuff with the gaming, but in the end it wasn't too difficult.
So you went all the way through. I mean, I'm guessing here at your sort of education level, did you, at the age of 15, you didn't sort of drop out at 16 or 17 just so you could play Team Fortress 2. I mean, you would have stayed with your various stages of education, playing TF2 the whole time, and presumably getting better and better the whole time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I wouldn't have ever thought of dropping out of school to play TF2. I was able to juggle both of them and do pretty well in school and in TF2 at the same time, though there was a lot of stress and procrastination, but I think I thrive under pressure. So
yeah, I mean, I've seen how you play. I kind of want to almost stay on like your school life, but I almost don't, because like you brought up a very weird aspect. Almost one of the iconic things about B4nny the player is that you appear to be asleep while you're playing. I mean, you're basically leaning back the whole time.
Well, playing comfortably is important. So yeah, I like to lean back. I like to stay focused and calm. It's pretty important.
Is that, I mean, presumably you've kept with it, because I see your streams now. I watch your streams invariably once or so a month, maybe twice a week if I'm feeling particularly like hungry for my B4nny. But whenever I see your streams, you don't seem to be like in the prone position. You're not lying down on your back and looking up at the ceiling. You're upright and you're chatting with the audience, and you're doing your normal sort of casual, calm thing. Is the leaning back thing something that you've weaned yourself out of? Where did you pick it up from? And if it's something that's gone, does it come back in for competitions?
It's definitely not gone. I play a little bit of a camera trick on my stream, so I'm like completely leaned as I normally would be while streaming. I just have the camera equally leaned, so it's like perpendicular to me.
Okay.
So it looks like I'm upright, though I'm not.
Have you seen those desks that you can get that are basically, it's like a lounger? I think they're designed specifically for like people who play console, but it is a lounger with the monitor kind of tilted in front of your face, sort of all in one. Is that like the ultimate goal? Are you going to at some point do a sponsorship deal with those manufacturers and have like a B4nny desk?
Well, if they pay me enough, yeah. But right now I'm happy with what I've got, so it works. So I'm not interested in making any major changes right now. The only problem is sometimes you go to like a LAN event and they don't have a chair that's going to accommodate, So like at the old ESEA LANs, they're like hotel ballroom chairs that didn't lean. So I kind of forced the lean into it and kind of slouched down, and let's just say it's very numbing on my backside.
Because you're sat there. I mean, it's not like you get to play a few games and then get kicked out, or lose a game and have a bit of time off. Like you're invariably playing for the entirety of the event. Like to put it another way, you win a lot. So you're always on. You play to the very end. If you've started a competition, you're going to be playing at the end of it, almost certainly in the finals.
Ideally, yeah.
So how on earth do you maintain that winning streak? I mean, like it's a totally separate conversation from lying down. Presumably, lying down is not your key to perfection. But you do seem to be on the winning team a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I do think comfort is very important. First of all, like at LAN, my first LAN ever, I learned that very quickly. It's just like when I felt like I wasn't able to play my best because of comfort, I was really uncomfortable and like really, I don't know, just didn't feel good. But once I was able to make the small like micro adjustments and get that, understood, then I played way better. So there actually is a lot of value to being comfortable, like leaning and doing your thing so you play your best, within reason, of course. But I'd say the real key is just sort of the experience and the commitment, to my team and to practicing and just preparing for our opponents, things like that. That's really what makes the success happen, I guess.
I mean, I've been lucky in as much as I've seen you competing in the Ice Series events. And I also saw you last year for Rewind 1. And I want to talk to you about Rewind, but it's like it's coming up rather than honing it into this conversation. But I've seen like I've seen the variations of you that I don't think a lot of other sort of fans might have seen. People who haven't come to the events, who have just seen you playing online. And so I just got, I think I just got a subscriber message then. That's quite cool. But what I've seen, oh my God, it's Raptor X is hosting me, 53 viewers. Thank you very much, Raptor. So anyway, what I've seen is you being laid back in terms of your posture, but you're at the same time being quite precise in the language you're using when you're talking to your teammates during the games themselves. And then when you step away from the game, you're almost stern. That's actually far too polite a way of putting it. You're very stern with your teammates. You're effectively always on, and then at the end of the competition, you relax, almost as if it's for the first time during an entire weekend event. So, is it just because you want to win? Is it just because you want to do the best version of Team Fortress 2 it's possible to do? Or is this a slow motion version of a mental breakdown every time you play?
Yeah, when the tournament's on, I just try to stay focused and keep my eye on the goal, which is to win. That's why we go to the events. We don't go there to drink beer. Like, we could do that any weekend. But when there's an event, that's our purpose, and there's a lot of people counting on it, and, it matters to everyone else on the team too. Mm-hmm. So being selfish in those moments would be pretty disrespectful to everyone involved. So you won't see me like partying until the tournament's completely over. And then, yeah, that's a lot of pressure off, a weight off the shoulders. But I like it. I like having either the celebratory sort of party afterwards or the blackout and forget all your problems sort of thing. I don't know.
And that, in fact, that is what I recall of seeing you. I think it was at Insomnia, where you had a go at your teammates for them wanting to enjoy themselves, going out before the event is completely over. Is the kind of the clean living thing, the lack of alcohol during an event in particular, is that important to you, that everyone remains 100% focused?
I mean, it's just a undeniable fact that people start making bad choices when they're getting drunk and staying up late and all this. It can really affect your ability to play well the next day. And I think a lot of people are too short-sighted about that stuff. Like, I've had lands, like even last Rewind, we had a teammate who the day before the grand finals, stayed out partying, couldn't find his way back to our room because he was drunk and like hanging out with people till like 4 or 5 a.m. and didn't end up getting much sleep. And then, we struggle in the finals because of it. And that's just not something I ever want to have to deal with. So try to make that clear from the very beginning that we can go wild afterwards, but before the tournament ends, we need to stay focused.
Do you see that being maintained by a lot of other groups? I mean, you are top of the pack. You have been for many years. It's almost to the point now where any tournament that you compete in, you're almost guaranteed to win. Is that because, can you attribute that to just the sheer quality of your play, your personal play, how the team works together, or is it because the other competitors aren't as focused as you are?
Well, it could be a mix of everything, but I think the biggest thing that has given us the advantage is definitely the way that we've, prepared and gotten ourselves on the same page. And a lot of that is because when I'm leading the team, I like to be very thorough and very, direct with people about what we need to do and the style that we want to play and just getting everyone on the same page. I think a lot of other teams are a little bit lazier with that kind of stuff.
Mm.
There's kind of been a consistency because I'm the main caller and all that too, that style has been able to like transcend any one roster. And then when it comes to the events, I mean, yeah, a lot of the other teams, they don't take it as seriously. They like to do the partying and all that. They don't see it as a big deal. And maybe it is because they assume they won't win, but I don't assume we're going to win. I think it's the decisions that we make that give us the ability to win. We don't take any wins for granted. We always try and prepare. And I think that mentality is kind of self-fulfilling, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, so the idea that you mentioned this earlier, but the fact that you play other teams, you prepare to play against other teams, as opposed to playing the best Team Fortress 2 you can do. You play against the team. You specifically prepare to go up against an individual team, meeting them on their own terms. What does that normally entail? Do you sort of watch their playthroughs? Do you write down notes whenever you play them, or are you playing against individual players on that team? How does this work out for you?
Well, I'm always paying attention and learning people's tendencies, whether it be a pug or a scrim. I know what to expect, and that's such an important tool for being a main caller, because it's all about anticipation. The more like you can anticipate the enemy's moves, then the better you're gonna be able to deal with them. So if we're in a pug and someone does something like flashy, or they keep doing something over and over again, or if we're in a scrim, same thing, I'll always notice it, and I'll know what they're capable of, and I'll let my team always know to look out for these certain things. So team to team or situation to situation, I'll be calling out specific, situations to be prepared for, to look out for. Some teams have like an overall style that we need to just be aware of, and kind of going into every match, we'll always have our guidelines of what we don't want to do, what they're going to try to do, and how we're not going to let it happen,
I mean, that's great for when you're playing against teams that you normally play against, you scrim against. I mean, I would assume that this is sort of like the Sixes leagues, the ESCA stuff, where the meta has currently been set, and you're just kind of working. You're working to perfect that sort of 10% of differentiation. But in a lot of the competitions that you're going up to, I mean, you're doing international competitions now. You're having international players come over and fight you, where you don't necessarily know an opponent going into the map. How do you sort of not prepare, but prepare as you go along? Is there a way of like acknowledging a player and then reacting to them for the first time you see them?
Right. Well, there are some resources that we can use to research some of the teams that aren't necessarily competing in our leagues. We can watch casts and streams and demos and all this stuff. So we do that. But yeah, I mean, sometimes that all goes out the window when you get to the event and you kind of feel it out. Thankfully, most of the tournaments have sort of a group stage type thing where you can kind of get on-site sort of research done. And so we're always paying attention at the event to kind of see what they're doing to the other teams, and we know how we match up against those familiar teams. So you can kind of piece it all together, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's not a lot of the teams I feel like are going to be able to like completely change the game. It's definitely, like you said, kind of the 10% of what makes them unique. So for the most part, we want to play our game, but it's always just kind of being aware of what they're capable of and just not giving them a free pass to do what they want to get that little edge.
I mean, we've been talking about Froyo Tech for a while now, but we've actually not mentioned Froyo Tech. Froyo Tech is your team name. Presumably, I think that you're one of these people who is very sort of brand aware. Certainly, the fact that you've had Froyo Tech t-shirts for a number of years. How did you come about Froyo Tech as a name, and is it yours, or are you just a player for it?
Right. Well, Froyo Tech originated in 2014 as just sort of this super team, I suppose, was the idea. It was actually Shade's idea, who was our medic, from the beginning. He's been on and off with our team. But he tried to unite players from a bunch of different rosters to create the best team possible to win ESEA and eventually to, compete at the I Series I-52. And so the name was just kind of arbitrary, I think, at first. It was, it's pretty clearly a parody of Yo-Yo Tech. And it was kind of an inside joke, just teasing one of our teammates. So that's all it was at first, but it kind of evolved to be like, I don't know, a name with some power to it. Once we started winning and started having the consistent appearances at events and things like that, it was something that people could attach to, and it kind of started transcending that original like inside joke and just became its own thing. And it's definitely something that I want to maintain. I think that the consistency is important for the, the competitive scene. The fans can recognize the team and all that kind of stuff. And it really helps, like you mentioned, when we're trying to, fund the team, we can sell merch, and we have that history that people can be like, yeah, this team is credible. They know what they're doing. And it's something that we can, rely on, I guess.
I mean, for the sort of exposure Froyo Tech has had over the years, do you think that people outside of Team Fortress 2, perhaps the sort of CSGO kind of, I'm trying to think of other games that have competitive FPSing. I'm blanking on them. I'm sure they exist. But is there an awareness of Froyo Tech outside of TF2?
I'm sure there is to some degree. I mean, back in the day with the ESEA LANs, we used to, mingle with some of the CS players. We'd kind of start building some sort of familiarity with them. Like, we'd see them and they'd see us, and they'd be like, maybe we're playing the more obscure game, but we're definitely there. And they can't not notice that, especially when we're running around with our shirts on, the Froyo shirts and all that. And then, there's definitely been some crossover with some of the other FPS scenes like Quake or Overwatch, because people from TF2 have gone over and had success competing in those games too. And people are always curious, where did this guy come from,
So I've got to ask the question. It's an obvious question, and you kind of led me down the garden path on this one. Why are you still here? What is TF2 to you that makes you not want to, like other people have done in the past, go on to other competitive formats, other competitive games?
Well, TF2 is the greatest game of all time, and the competitive scene is something that I feel passionate about and I enjoy greatly. And I think that this game has immense potential still. And that's something I tend to get very fixated on, is the potential of things. And I like the idea of trying to pursue that and, build it up if I can do my part.
I'm just going to say now, if you want to add at the bottom of one of your shirts, TF2 is the greatest game of all time, I'm pretty sure that would sell a few as well. So
it's a good idea.
It's good. It's good. I want 5% of it. It's a good and it's a bold message. And it's something that I think a lot of people, particularly in the world of Team Fortress 2, want to get behind. Is it a message that I know that you've been to Valve, you had sit downs with, I don't know whether it was Robin Walker at the time, or if it had moved on, like the mantle of head of TF2 production had moved on to Jill, or to Eric. But is that your foot in the door that you sort of waved outside and said, "Hey, TF2 is the greatest game of all time, let me in"? How did those kind of conversations get started?
Yeah, so I do have contact with Valve, and I have met with them a couple times. Robin Walker's not so much in TF2 anymore. He's more in Dota, but I did meet him. But mainly Dave Riller and Eric Smith are the guys that I know. And honestly, I didn't go out of my way to talk to them. They tried to reach me. There's been some efforts in the community to get in touch with Valve to see, what the competitive scene and Valve can do together. And from those conversations, my name or my email or whatever was just in the chain somewhere, and they grabbed it and they're like, they reached out to me when matchmaking was coming around. So they just reached out to me and asking me to give my feedback and test some things with them. because they, I guess, felt like I had, some credibility within the competitive scene, and that's what they were trying to focus on at that time.
Have you spoken to them since? Because clearly matchmaking wasn't the result that I think either the general community or even the competitive community were looking for. Have you been able to sort of go after them? I think is probably a nice or probably a bad way of phrasing it, but give them like useful feedback about the community's response to their solution.
Right. I generally try to respect kind of their pace and their workflow and whatever they like to do. And yeah, definitely the meet your matchmaking didn't quite live up to the potential, but I still see a lot of potential there, and there's still been confirmed updates coming to it, which I'm looking forward to. But generally, I like to try to focus on things like balance changes and things like that. I've written up many like long posts to them about ways to balance items, but mainly the important thing that they care about is sort of proving to them that an item is problematic. And they're pretty creative, honestly, in the ways that they solve some of those problems. But once it's kind of clear to them, that's the first step, and that's what I try to focus on usually. But I did have a lot of contact with them regarding balance changes for the last two major updates. It's kind of cooled off for a while at this point, but I feel like it's kind of on me. If I want to reach out to them, I think I can, and I definitely should. I think there's a lot of things that, I think they need to acknowledge, I guess, some of the issues, or maybe even just ready to look forward to the next major update and kind of start preparing balance changes for later this year.
So this is obviously a follow-on question, but do you think there is a future for competitive within Team Fortress 2? Do you think it's something that the Valve are actively looking at, improving the competitive experience for TF2?
Absolutely. I think you just kind of have to take a step back and remove all your kind of biases and just sort of look at the actions they've been taking, adding in competitive mode in the first place, balancing the game so that items are no longer broken or needing to be banned, trying to rebalance classes so that they have more of a generalist style, can keep up with some of the other classes more. This is the direction that they tend to be moving. And there's a lot of other things that they may be laying the groundwork for. Things like war paints that could be used to support teams and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, war paints is something that they've utilized, not by that name, but certainly in that style with CSGO, and in fact Dota for that region as well. It is something that I'm surprised they haven't brought into effect for TF2. Do you think that there's any reason why they're holding back in terms of like doing that sort of bold and blatant support of competitive?
I think it's just sort of a symptom of their limitations. I think that because, we all know that they have a fairly small development team, they have to work at a slower pace and be more careful with things. And, they're also trying to balance out their communities. They've got casual and competitive, but thankfully they've acknowledged that going forward, they're trying to sort of bridge that gap and treat all TF2 players as one community, but just sort of like a gradual sort of continuum of players that have interest in competitive or don't. Okay. So, it's just a matter of time, I suppose. And there's a lot of like groundwork that needs to be done. I think it's a fairly simple thing, just like the number of steps that it would take to make TF2 a very successful competitive game. It's a very simple path, but it's one that takes a lot of time because of their limitations. But I think it's one that, if we're patient, we'll start seeing as more and more realistic, I suppose.
Yeah, I think if you look at the path of CSGO, and CS Source or Counter-Strike in its original format existed for a very long time before Valve realistically got involved to the degree that they have now. Even going as far as saying like CS 1.6 wasn't in any way as well supported as CSGO was. And maybe it takes TF3 to come out assuming that's even a thing, or just a sort of an evolution of TF2 before Valve would actively sort of put their hat in the ring and demand for it to be a thing that's considered an esport. Look,
that's possible.
Esports is something that is definitely a focus for you. There's a number of leagues that you're associated with, and you kind of stepped up last year, presumably before this time last year, since the event was already done this time last year. But you announced Rewind, a collaboration with a sort of internet, well, not even an internet cafe, sort of an esports environment lounge, the esports arena in Santa Ana.
Yep.
And that was, I kind of want to say it was your brainchild. Is that unfair, or what was the relationship that was going on for that?
Well, previous to Rewind LAN, I actually had hosted a couple SoCal LANs, and they were just at a small esports area in like a mall. I had done a couple myself, and I was looking for a successor to those LANs in SoCal. It came about that Esports Arena was interested in supporting TF2 and hosting an event, but I was mainly sort of an organizer to help make sure that the event was up to the standards that the competitive scene needs, based on experience at iSeries LANs and ESEA LANs and my own TF2 hosted events. But I can't really take the credit for securing the deal or anything like that. I was just sort of an organizer after it became clear that this was something that was going to happen. I think most of the credit, if I remember correctly, needs to go to Sammy Face.
I'll have to get Sammy Face in as a guest then and grill her for a while on why Rewind 1 existed in the first place then. She does appear all over the place as well when it comes to LAN events. The LAN experience in North America, I visited PAX 1 year, I think sort of maybe 8 years ago, long time ago. And there was definitely a LAN going on at PAX, and there were maybe 30 or 40 people in a room, and I got the impression that was a big LAN for North America. The Rewind event, it had 8 teams, and a fairly interested audience, but it wasn't the sort of thousands of people that turn up for the iSeries events. Is it difficult trying to persuade people that actually LANs can be bigger than they have otherwise appeared to be in North America, particularly for Team Fortress 2?
It is kind of. I think that a lot of people are just kind of apathetic and lazy about participating in this competitive TF2 scene and setting up the travel plans and going to the LAN and all that. So that's definitely the biggest hurdle. Is a lot of people are always hung up on, just their own personal logistics, I guess. It's hard to find people that are just enthusiastic. They're just like, no matter what, I'm going. I'm going to find a way. Yeah. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get my team there. We're going to be all set. And we can commit 100% on day one of this announcement. Usually it's kind of like pulling teeth for like a few weeks. And then you kind of get one, and then the next team's like, oh, okay, I guess we can go. And,
Absolutely.
And then some team backs out or someone dodges at the last minute, and then it's, stressful all over again. So we deal with that a lot. I think, probably not as common in other scenes where everything's just taken care of for them and the players just show up. And, because in TF2, we're grassroots still. So we have to do all of the logistics as well as the competing. So it adds another layer of responsibility, and a lot of people aren't great with responsibility. But the Rewind LAN. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, from your perspective, you for very many of these events. I'm going to start talking about Rewind 2 and the stuff that you do with with Face It as well, the TF2 Pro League. But for many of the events, you're not just turning up there as a player. You're turning up as a player, as a team manager, as an interested party, someone who's almost certainly going to be interviewed on a number of things, and may have had something to do with a vast number of, or a large number of people turning up to watch. So for you, surely these kind of events are they require significantly more than the average punter, the average player, or the average viewer in terms of efforts.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
there's a lot to it, and I don't know, it's just something that I've gotten used to, but they're very valuable skills, I think, and I'm thankful for the experience. Like, even though TF2 isn't, some massive esport, I've gotten a lot of great experience out of it, gotten to travel and, do all this team management and competing under a lot of pressure and handling press and things like this. So it's been pretty great, actually.
Okay, I think it's safe now to wander over towards the world of. Let's come back to Rewind 2. I want to touch on TF2 Pro League. This one is yours.
TF2 Pro League is something that I am basically the lead on. Yeah, it's a collaboration between myself and Face It, and I mean, obviously, I've been building up a big team of people to help make this project happen, because it's quite an undertaking, really. But yeah, the TF2 Pro League is something that I'm basically spearheading myself.
Okay, what is it? Is it a LAN? Is it a league? Will there be interactions? Do you always win? Is there a rule to say you can't play anymore? Explain TF2 Pro League for me.
Right. So TF2 Pro League is starting as a 6v6 matchmaking platform, solo queue experience. And basically, the goal of it is to create a platform for competitive TF2 that is accessible and inclusive of players of all skill levels.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of that's the ultimate goal. I think most competitive TF2 platforms right now don't really care too much to include everyone. They're very happy excluding a lot of people based in just their infrastructure. It doesn't allow for a lot of people, and they don't do a lot of outreach. They're just happy existing in their little corner, But I'm trying to change that with the TF2 Pro League by sort of uniting pro level players with intermediate level players with absolutely brand new players all in one place, so that everyone can, just be one community of competitive and return the prestige and the competitiveness to it by, having the prizing and having divisions and, goals to work towards. And with the Face It, name behind it also gets that legitimacy that could help to push it beyond just the small community that we have now.
Yeah.
But could get it in front of a lot of other esports communities.
I mean, I almost want to ask you. I don't want to ask you this because I don't want you to feel that I'm accusing you of not doing it. Actually, you do a lot of things, but on a personal level, have you sort of reached out to new teams? Have you personally tried to sort of shepherd new teams through the processes of making them a viable TF2 competitive team? How do you encourage new players to play? Is it just through opening things like Face It to the public, or?
Right. So I personally, do what I can to interact with new players through the content that I create and stuff like that. But a lot of the, outreach to the casual players that are starting into competitive is going to be on platforms like Reddit and YouTube, which is something that we're not neglecting. And we also have a lot of people on board that are sort of coming from that background of just being enthusiastic about competitive TF2, but not necessarily being competitive. So it's just sort of I don't know, it's a community, a network of people that are of all skill levels, and it kind of just should organically grow from there. But we're definitely doing a lot of work to reach out to those people.
Is the intent to make this into like a LAN thing? So once you've gone through the process of, if you're attracting enough people to the Pro League, would it be possible to make a TF2 Pro League LAN, a sort of standalone LAN, and have lots of people turn up? Is LAN the ultimate expression of TF2 players, or is the online experience the ultimate expression of playing TF2?
Well, you have to understand that you have to start with the very fundamentals. And I think this is what a lot of people fail to understand with Valve as well, is that you can't have a major tournament until you have the foundation. And so if like matchmaking isn't solid, then there's no system for people to get involved. And, say you broadcast a stream of the, ESEA Grand Finals or something. If someone wants to play that, how can they do that? And there's currently not really a good way. So building up the tools for people to get involved and to filter their way up and just make the community active and healthy, that's step one. And that's where we're starting with TF2 Pro League. There's definitely potential to go beyond. We have, tournament tools on Faceit, and Faceit also has a history of investing into competitive scenes with things like the Faceit Pro League and the ECS for Counter-Strike and Dota. These are massive tournaments, and there's even rumors that Faceit will be the host of the next CSGO major. So tournaments are absolutely within the power of someone like Faceit. For that to happen though, this phase of it needs to be successful, needs to be incredibly successful. So I'm not really going to try and get too far ahead of myself on, promising lands or anything like that. Just focusing on, what we set out to do right now, which is to create a competitive platform that everyone can play, that's active for all players. No one gets excluded, and people can, just have that experience of competitive TF2 that's controlled and enjoyable, I guess.
Okay, well, I think I wanted to flip this back in that case to Rewind 2, which is an event that's taking place in the very near future. In fact, it's once again, it's happening in SoCal, in your region. It's actually, from the time that this is being recorded, I think like 2 weeks before you guys go live with that.
It's 1 week.
It's 1 week. Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks for reminding me. I would have missed it otherwise. That'd be really bad. So that's, again, you've been involved. Have you taken a much more personal role this time with this event? Or is it all still semi-face?
Well, actually, the organizers are completely different this time. I'm not really involved with it too much anymore. They've enlisted some people from the competitive scene, like Dashner and TSC,
right,
to handle most of it. So this time around, I'm much more of just a player. But I think that a lot of the sort of groundwork and precedent that we set last time is going to continue.
Nice.
And I'm also in touch with, some of the people from Esports Arena, and I'm only a short drive away from visiting. So I'm still kind of like in the loop, but I'm not really the one making decisions. And it's kind of nice. I like to do a lot, and be involved, but at the same time, I also like to be able to focus on my other projects and my team. So trusting them to do it right is something I'm willing to do.
Absolutely. I can only imagine the relief that you must feel not being 100%, this being your baby kind of thing.
Right. Well,
actually being able to sit down and play.
Yeah, that's what everyone in every other esport gets to do. They just show up and play, and we usually have to have the responsibility, like I mentioned. But it's kind of nice to have that sort of change of pace.
That's something my father always used to say in engineering, that the higher up the engineering ladder you go, the less engineering you do. And I think it's the same with TF2 and competitive. The more time you spend being involved in this kind of environment, the more you're expected to do that is nothing whatsoever to do with competing. You're mentioning this in terms of sort of picking up skills. Do you think that you've been sort of re-educated in one field or another for the time that you've spent in competitive Team Fortress 2?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I think that I've learned a lot of sort of management skills, I think, with the teams that I've led, and kind of keeping everyone on the same page and motivated and all this kind of stuff, and just uniting people to work towards a common goal. And that's something that I've kind of embraced and tried to continue on with, like TF2 Pro League and things like that. And then also content creation and things like that, social media stuff. Like the YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, all that kind of stuff. At this point, I'm technically, I guess, like self-employed, so that entrepreneurial thing is something I'm really into now.
And this is kind of interesting. You mentioned sort of Twitch and YouTube. YouTube, you're pushing out a video maybe once a week, sometimes more often, sometimes less often than that. But the streaming side of it, the Twitch side of it, you're like champion of TF2 streaming Twitch, if that's an accolade all of its own. Like there's almost a day that doesn't go past that you're not streaming for 8 hours, 12 hours at a time. Is that now your primary job? You're a Twitch streamer?
Yeah, I am a full-time streamer, and I have been for the last 3.5 years or so. I haven't been streaming as much as you just said. I kind of have, been forced to make sacrifices with the stream here and there, but it's still going well. It's still something that I'm committed to and people can expect from me, and something that I truly enjoy. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. But one of the great things about it is just the flexibility and the control that I have over my schedule and the content that I create. And, it's been really nice because that at the same time gives me the freedom to, put it on the back burner when I need to, and then come back to it when I have the time for it. So I really, really enjoy it.
I mean, I looked earlier at your follower count. You're on like sort of 78,000 followers, and presumably a fair portion of those are either subscribers or rampant fans. You're doing well out of this. Why do you think that there aren't more people streaming themselves playing TF2, or if there are, they aren't as popular as you are?
I still haven't really been able to figure out why TF2 on Twitch isn't really a thing, given how many people play the game. Just the conversion rate isn't consistent, with like CSGO and Dota and stuff like that. The player like conversion to streaming, like it's much higher percentage wise. I don't care really about sheer numbers, but percentage wise, like at any given time there might just be 100 or a couple hundred viewers on all of TF2. Meanwhile, there's supposedly like tens of thousands of people in the game itself. And I think that might just be sort of just like a traditional thing or something like that, where TF2 is just from that era before Twitch. So it's not as natural to people to get involved. And I think that's something that we as a community could put a lot more effort into changing. I think that a big part of why people, don't stream as much is just because TF2 is a hobby for pretty much everyone. So it's something that they maybe don't feel they have a responsibility to, their fans, or they don't have the time or the energy or the motivation or whatever. But that's also something that we can change by encouraging people to stream and by, creating more events that make people more attached to the game. Something like the tournament that's happening later today, organized by Essentials. These like monthly cups, I think these could be a perfect tool to get people to take competitive more seriously and to be more committed to their teams, and just have that expectation of we need to have our shit together every month. And I need to be practicing every month, every day,
It's not good enough to be on once every 3 months. You've got to be on at least once a month, if not every week, if not every day.
Yeah, that's what creates a healthy, vibrant scene, that consistency. So there's definitely a lot of things we could do to promote more people streaming. And I think that a lot of people have been sort of dabbling with it. It's good because Twitch has been expanding sort of the monetization of it. You can become an affiliate very easily. And so some people are starting to try to take advantage of that. And I mean, there's no better motivator for people, I think, than money. So if people can start earning a little bit from creating content, I think they might start doing it more consistently as well.
Yeah, speaking of which, a quick shout out to Py-bun, who's decided to donate some money through Patreon. So thank you very much for that. It does make a huge difference. Yeah. So you're receiving a certain amount of success, and you, as you say, you reached out to Essentials are doing their own monthly cups, but you're not just a Sixes player. I say that like Sixes player is the easiest thing in the world. Like, you're not just a Sixes player, but you're if we were to if there was a big scorebook for all of the leagues that existed anywhere in TF2, you would seem to occur quite often in all of them. Like, you have a team in Prolander. I'm sort of certain I've seen you play Highlander. Is that something that you feel that you need to do? Like, just because it's a competition that has prize money, or it's just another way of competing? Or is it something that you would rather people didn't do? Would you be more keen on there only being one version of competitive Team Fortress 2?
Right. So there are definitely a lot of leagues that I've participated in, a lot of different tournaments, like not just Sixes, but Prolander, as you mentioned, and Highlander and Ulta Duo, things of that nature. And I mean, I enjoy doing them, and definitely when there's a prize, it's a lot more, rewarding and something that I'm much more motivated to do. That's kind of the case with Prolander. I probably wouldn't play it otherwise. Just like I don't play fours, for example. There's not really any like drive to play fours. It's kind of too obscure and I don't know, whatever. I actually think, though, in general, we'd be better off consolidating the community as much as possible. I think that the fracturing of the community is a big problem, and things like Prolander and Highlander can kind of damage the health of the competitive scene. I think Sixes is the definitive competitive TF2 format, and it's been, officially adopted by Valve, at least the team size. So I think that kind of should have been the end of that conversation in terms of like what is competitive TF2. I think there's still some finer details that need to be ironed out for sure, but the community is not large enough, I think, to sustain a healthy like scene in all these different formats, like different leagues and things like that. So that's been an ongoing problem, and I think one that people need to take a little bit more seriously. It's something that I'm still kind of worried about, I suppose, with like TF2 Pro League, is like it needs to be across the board. Everyone needs to be in here, because otherwise it has the potential to do more harm than good. So that's just a common trend, is the fracturing of the scene.
I kind of really want to sort of say and stand on the soapbox and have this kind of argument, but we're coming to the end of the time that we get to spend with each other. I do want to say, however, that Highlander is awesome, and we can all agree to experience it on KritzKast on this very channel. And possibly we'll be seeing a bit of Prolander in the future. But look, the different ways of playing TF2 to one side, and almost trying desperately to shoehorn this into the conversation. Copenhagen LAN, Copenhagen Games, taking place at the end of March. You've done a number of international events. Is this one that you're going to be attending? Would you like to attend? What would it take to get you here?
I'm always interested in going to these international lands, but I don't think my team will be able to attend this one. I think it's just I don't know,
too far, too soon.
Yeah, it's all those things. So I would be open to offers to join a team similar to the way that I played at I-61 as a ringer. But right now, I don't really have any plans set in stone.
Okay, so if anyone is out there with just 5 players coming to Copenhagen LAN and they want to pull in a Banny, you know where to go. Right, though we have spent a wonderful time together, I think it is time now to name ourselves a player of the week. Banny, who is it that has helped you out, got you started or kept you going, or really just helped you in ways that are immeasurable and beyond comprehension to the human mind? Who is it that you would like to name as player of the week?
I think there's only one obvious answer. And
me? No, go on.
Well, my player of the week has to be Z Captain, who is someone who has helped me tremendously with my stream and with TF2 Pro League and my own personal development. So, yeah, he's definitely the guy.
Okay, I'm happy with that. Z Captain, congratulations! You are this week's player of the week.
Ooh, yeah! Start the freaking party!
And with that, I think I want to give you an opportunity to give shout-outs. Is there anyone beyond the pale of player of the week? Is there anyone you want to give a shout-out to, Bernie?
Well, I'd like to thank you for having me on the show. It's been fun. And just thanks to everyone who's out there supporting competitive TF2, whether you're just active in community discussions or watching streams or contributing to the team crowdfunding or LAN, crowdfunding. You're going to come to LAN and just be active. Those are the people that, I want to acknowledge the most. I think there's too much apathy in the competitive scene, and that hurts us a lot as well. So if you're active in whatever way that may be, thank you. And that's about it.
Awesome. Banny, how do people get hold of your stuff?
Right, so I stream on twitch.tv/Banny, B4nny. I also have a YouTube channel under the same name. I have a Twitter, which is 4G_Banny. I'd like to get that changed, but and of course I am, working on TF2 Pro League. I've got my own Discord, so I'm all over the place. But if you go to my Twitch stream, I stream every day. You can find me there, and I can, point you in the right direction for whatever you need to find.
Awesome. It has been very interesting and quite pleasurable having you on the show today, Banny. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks. It's been fun.
Take care, everybody. Good night, and we will see you very shortly.
Bye.